In 2012, Apple's chief designer said something that should have sounded absurd coming from someone working for one of the most profitable companies on Earth. Making money, he said, was not the goal. It never had been. And the company he'd helped build into the most valuable in the world was no longer being run the way he said it should be. Jony Ive's speech at the British Embassy's Creative Summit in July 2012 was a genuine attempt to explain how Apple's design studio actually thought. He said, "We are really pleased with our revenues, but our goal isn't to make money. This might sound flippant, but it's true. Our goal, and what makes us excited, is to make great products. If we are successful, people will like them, and if we are operationally competent, we will make money." The motto was always great products first. He backed the point with a specific piece of company history, because when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the business was months from bankruptcy. And for most, the obvious fix was to slash costs, cut headcount, protect margins, and stabilize the balance sheet first and worry about the products later. But Ive said that wasn't what happened at Apple. Because Jobs' diagnosis of Apple's crisis wasn't financial at all. It was that the products simply weren't good enough, and the only way out was to make better ones. Apple, in his telling, only survived by getting better. For the next 14 years, that ordering of product first and profit as a consequence rather than a target was close to gospel inside Apple's design studio. Ive was describing in his own account the actual operating principle of the company that built the iMac, the iPod, and the iPhone, rather than his own personal philosophy. But the trouble is that principles like these are easy to state in a speech, but considerably harder being outvoted by people who don't see it the same way. The most obvious case of that principle was with the Apple Watch, and tech journalist Trip Mickle's book titled After Steve documents exactly how the disagreement played out. Ive saw the watch as a fashion object first, one that happened to run software. He pushed to market it that way from the very start. Apple actually hired Mark Newsom, an industrial designer, who had previously designed watches, specifically to help sell that vision internally. Ive is said to have met with his team almost daily to get the details right. When it came time to launch it, Ive got his way on the object itself, and the results were extraordinary and also strange. Because in April 2015, Apple released the Watch Edition, its case cut from solid 18-karat gold, custom alloyed to be twice as hard as standard gold, which priced from $10,000 up to $17,000 for the models with gold buckle leather bands. Apple stores were fitted with jewelry-grade safes just to secure them overnight, and Ive personally introduced the watch to Anna Wintour and Karl Lagerfeld at a showing during Paris Fashion Week. This was Ive's vision executed with almost no compromise, a luxury object first and a computer second. But commercially, it barely registered. Apple had reportedly forecast around 40 million watch sales in the first year, but they actually sold closer to 10 million. The Gold Edition models did worse than that by a wide margin, reportedly selling only in the low tens of thousands of units, and most of them gone within the first 2 weeks before demand fell off almost entirely. And by September 2016, Apple had stopped making an 18-karat gold watch altogether and has never brought one back. And inside Apple, that outcome mattered less as a story about one product and more as ammunition. Because according to Mickle's reporting, Ive spent the years that followed increasingly frustrated with what he saw as the rise of operational leaders inside the company, executives whose real skill was protecting inventory margins and growing the services business rather than betting the company on a physical object the way the Watch Edition had been. Ive felt those voices were carrying more weight in the room with every passing year, and that hardware risk-taking of the kind that had defined his entire career at Apple. But none of this happened as a single confrontation. It was more of a slow shift in whose opinion mattered most in a product review, the kind of change that's not visible from the outside, but obvious to the person watching their influence shrink from the inside. After 27 years at the company, Ive left to start his own studio. If Apple's operational turn had been the correct call and Ive's product-first instincts had been outdated, you'd expect the company to have kept moving in that direction. But instead, the opposite happened. The clearest hardware casualty of that shift was the MacBook Pro's butterfly keyboard, which was introduced in 2015 in pursuit of a thinner laptop and was plagued for years afterward with keys that would stick or stop working entirely, often from nothing more than a speck of dust. And it took Apple until 2019, 4 years and multiple failed revisions later, to formally abandon the mechanism and return to a more reliable scissor switch design. There's also Project Titan, which was Apple's decade-long attempt to build a car. Ive's original ambitions for the vehicle were an autonomous lounge on wheels with no steering wheel at all. And Apple's operations and engineering leadership kept clashing with that vision over cost, manufacturability, for 10 years between a fully autonomous pod with no pedals and a more conventional car with a steering wheel, unable to settle on which company it was actually trying to be. Apple poured an estimated $1 billion a year into it before finally canceling the entire program in February 2024, shifting the roughly 2,000 employees who'd been working on it over to artificial intelligence instead. And one of the main reasons they canceled it was due to low profit margins. Then there's Apple's growth strategy. Wall Street judges Apple on services revenue, the App Store's cut, iCloud subscriptions, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, a business built on extracting more recurring money from a device Apple already sold you years ago, rather than convincing you to buy something genuinely new. And then there's the people who worked for the company. If Ive's approach to design had simply been a personal thing that Apple was right to move past, you'd expect the talented people he trained to have stayed on and thrived under the new direction. But almost none of them did. And in the years following his 2019 departure, Apple's industrial design team was almost entirely gone. Evans Hankey, Ive's hand-picked successor, left in 2022 without even being given a seat on Apple's executive team, reporting instead to the company's chief operating officer, a supply chain executive with no design background, which told the rest of the studio everything it needed to know about where design now sat in the pecking order. Bart Andre, Apple's longest-serving designer, retired in early 2024. Colin Burns, Peter Russell Clark, and Shota Aoyagi left around the same time, and a large share of them walked straight into Ive's new studio. And that new studio is called Love From, which was founded with his friend and longtime collaborator Mark Newson. And the evidence for what Ive actually meant back in 2012 was that Love From doesn't make mass-market consumer electronics designed to satisfy a quarterly earnings call, because it designed a $60,000 limited edition anniversary turntable for the Scottish audio brand Linn, reworking a design most people had never heard of purely because Ive had wanted one as a design student decades earlier and could never afford it. It's designing alongside Ferrari on the look of future vehicles. Buckingham Palace commissioned Ive and his team to design the official emblem for King Charles III's coronation, a crown formed from the national flowers of the 4 UK nations, generating no recurring revenue for anyone. Love From even redesigned the comic relief red nose, the small plastic novelty item millions of British households buy once a year for charity, replacing it with a flat-pack version made almost entirely from plant-based material, an object with a retail price of a couple of pounds that clearly wasn't the point of taking the job on. And all of this traces back to what he said about how the product is the only thing that matters, and the money, if it comes after. Because nobody at Love From is negotiating supplier margins on a turntable that will sell in the low hundreds of units. Apple, meanwhile, kept similar designs and lost almost every person who'd learned to think the way he did.